If you think about how the authors of the Nei Jing were trying to encapsulate their embodied experiences in language, this is what the Nei Jing is, you could say. It's like their best attempt at writing down what they were embodying. What you just described is like, oh, this is something that's embodied to you now. So our job, our process is the opposite. Our process is to take what they have written and then embody it in our experiences.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological. I remember watching the conversations between Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell in the late 80s, partly because the content of the conversations spoke so deeply to the unspoken and yet present energies of life, and I suspect also because I loved the Greek and Roman myths as a kid. I would read them over and over again, and as an adult realized they're not fiction, but deeply textured maps of the human psyche. Those conversations came up in a conversation not long ago, and I threw in on purchasing the series, like the dialogues between Huangdi and Qibo, or Socrates and his students, or you and your friends discussing medicine for that matter. There is something that emerges in dialogue that you can't get from a lecture or orientation. In the second episode, Campbell says this: myth is a manifestation in symbolic images, metaphorical images, of the energies within us, moved by the organs of the body in conflict with each other. You can't be a practitioner of Chinese medicine and not be completely floored by this statement. It bespeaks the unity in our medicine that goes from the heavenly stems to the turn of the seasons to the function of the organs, along with the workings of the Sheng and Ke cycles. Campbell goes on to say that in our ever-changing world, that what was proper 50 years ago is not proper today. The virtues of the past are the vices of today, and many of what we thought to be vices of the past are necessities of today, and that the moral order has to catch up with the moral necessities of actual life and time, here and now, and that is why you can't go back to old-time religion, why you can't lean on the past to navigate the present. But as with myth, there are stories, there are maps that transcend time. It doesn't mean that we have to go back and adopt the old ways, but there is something illuminative that moves through time. And if we can catch that in our present moment, be ignited by the spark that opened the mind, perception, and practice of those we describe as great doctors, then there is the possibility of practicing medicine in a way that is both rooted in fundamentals and allows us to unfold our practice in a way that's helpful for the times in which we live. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com. And where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
We like to think of our medicine as being something ancient but also relevant and useful for modern times. There are ideas and concepts like that of yi, often translated as intention, significance, or meaning, and xing, which means form. On first glance, this might seem we are talking about matter on one hand and something immaterial on the other, but as with so much in East Asian medicine, it's not about one thing or another, but rather something of a vital interplay. In this conversation with Stefan Grace, we look at some classical Chinese and see what it might have to say to us here in this modern moment. We look at the importance of verifying the words of the ancients in the experience of the present, and how the idea of Tong is not just about creating an opening, but how it is connective in surprising ways. Let's get into this. Stefan Grace, welcome to Geological.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm glad to be here.
I'm delighted to have you. We met briefly at one of Sabine Wilms's Tea Time talks.
Yeah. Xing and Qi.
Xing and Qi. You and Brenda Hood.
That was supposed to be the topic. Of course, it meanders, which is not a bad thing by any means, but that was the intended topic.
Well, of course it meanders. Xing and Qi? I mean, okay, like good luck nailing those down.
Yeah, right. So pretty much everything, material and immateriality.
Exactly.
Everything under the sun and above the sun, literally.
That's right. And pre-sun and post-sun.
Pre-sun and post-sun.
And I kind of wanted to touch on some of that. And I love talking about Qi because Qi is the most difficult. I would say it's impossible to translate into English.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those characters that should just be left as is. And it's interesting because I think it's one of them that has made its way into popular Western culture as in its own right. Not necessarily correct or all-encompassing definition in people's minds, but still you could say the word Qi, and most people out in the world who aren't specialists have at least heard that term.
Yes.
That's pretty cool, I think. Just that word has made that leap.
It has. Yin and Yang also have made the leap to the common vernacular. And I sense that we as Westerners, we think we might understand something of what these things are, but I think we're usually wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been thinking about these things not as long as you have, probably 15 years, and I still don't think that I understand everything about those things. That's part of the point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of it is our language. I think part of it is just the nature of the English language is that it's always seeking to pinpoint things in as specific a manner as possible.
It is.
It's really what English excels at. It's not a bad thing. It's just the nature of the language.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the opposite of, I think, how classical Chinese functions. And that's a hard thing to wrap your brain around if you haven't encountered that way of thinking before.
It is. I would say I don't really know much classical Chinese. I've studied some modern Chinese. And one of the things that used to drive me crazy is how obtuse it was. It's like purposefully attempting not to nail things down.
Yeah.
It leaves tons of wiggle room,
Yeah.
all the time. And it would make, as a Westerner, initially learning it, it would drive me batshit crazy.
Totally. I think part of that is because we all speak this language that's so precise. And so it's just another way of conceiving of the world and life experience and the human experience, which is it's a difficult leap to make.
Well, it'll mess your brain up a bit.
Yeah, but it's good for it. Good for your brain, that is. I mean, it helps your brain plastic, I think. The nature of the classical language and maybe the modern, I don't know, I've never studied modern Chinese, so I'll take your word for that, but is that you have to maintain all of these various meanings within your mind's eye or your field of vision simultaneously while you're focusing on maybe a single definition, but always knowing in the back of your mind that there's all these other definitions lurking. That's a challenging thing to do and not something I've mastered by any means, but I think that's part of the skill that one hopes to develop is to, Keats called it, negative capability. It's like the ability to maintain a variety of meanings and ideas, some of them even contradictory, within your frame of mind at the same time and not see them contradictory and not rule any of them out.
Yeah. That sounds a whole lot like seeing patients in clinic.
Totally, right.
I mean, it does. We've got all these ideas and these thoughts and these concepts, and they all have a kind of reality to them. And then we bring it together in that moment of encounter with the patient, and it could be some of this and it could be some of that. And then there's a gestalt of all the pieces together, and it makes your brain work in a very quirky way.
Yeah. But just point out, this is maybe the only third time I've talked or corresponded with you, Michael, but every time you bring up working in clinic quite soon into the interaction, and I just have to say how much I appreciate that. Because we get very heady in these conversations, and it gets very, very floating off into the ether pretty quickly, and I just appreciate how grounded that forces us to stay by maintaining that reality at the forefront of your mind, which I've just noticed in the 3 times we've corresponded that you bring up pretty quickly, which is, but what about clinic, and how does this relate to clinic, which is, yeah, you got to keep your feet on the ground. Otherwise, we're just talking heads.
Well, I get confused really easily, I find. And if I've got something to ground it in, something that's, I'm going to say reality-based. Clinic for me is very reality-based because I've got all my ideas, but then I've got a person in front of me with whatever experience they're having, and then whatever physically and psychoemotively is going on. And that is just like the greatest thing to keep you honest, because it's like, I've got a great idea, man. Like, watch this treatment. This is beautiful. Wow, that didn't do a thing.
Yeah, I know. None of my patients care how much I've read the Shanghanlin.
That's right.
as long as they feel better, I could read and memorize whatever I want. As long as they feel better. And
so let me ask you, how did you get involved with classical Chinese? What took you down that particular rabbit hole?
Well, it started with martial arts. It started with Kung Fu and training Kung Fu. And training specifically a martial art called Xingyi, which is the Xing we were just talking about, form and matter, and then Yi, which is the E that we all argue over what does that mean, but it can mean mind or intention. I like intention. That's really my favorite. So I was training that, and I continue to train that, and then through a group called the North American Tung Chi Dao Association, based in Arizona. And the curriculums that are taught within our association that come from our teacher, Vince Black, the martial curriculums are always taught hand in hand with medicine. It's just how it's done. It's how it's been done for, of course, hundreds and probably thousands of years. But within our little bubble here in the United States in 21st century America, we still try to do it that way. And so I was always just interested in training Kung Fu, and the medicine was there. And we had our lineage of manual medicine of Tui Na and bone setting, and then our lineage of topical herbs. And I was never really that interested in it. I just wanted to train Kung Fu, but you kind of had to do the medicine. That was how it was done.
That's the way it's done. You'd learn to take each other apart and put each other back together.
Yeah. So I tagged along doing the medicine because that's how it was done. And that's like the party line is that, well, if you improve your Kung Fu, then you improve your medicine. And if you improve your medicine, then you improve your Kung Fu. They're flip sides of the same coin. And so, like I said, I just wanted to train Xingyi. That's really what I wanted to do, was elevate that skill. So then I started to kind of just be exposed to the medicine through that. And then more and more just came around to it. I don't know how, there wasn't a moment. It was just like little by little, after 3 or 4 years of being immersed in this culture of our association and training our Xingyi and other arts, I was just like, man, I love this. Like, it's just incredible. And then it kind of dawned on me at some point that maybe I actually love the medicine more than training Kung Fu. I don't know if that's really true. But it definitely was, I loved it enough that I was like, I need to be serious about a professional career in this, and therefore have to consider acupuncture school and all of what that entails. And so I did that. And I was in Portland, Oregon, and there's 2 schools there. It's a thriving enough.
Yeah, it's a hotbed of Chinese medicine there.
Really a lot of great teachers there. Who knows why? It's kind of a funny thing that Portland, Oregon, of all places, would end up with all of these.
Well, Pacific Northwest in general.
Yeah.
Seattle, same thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So then I gravitated toward, well, I'll tell you why, actually. We had been reading the Nei Jing within our association. This was one of the things that we got from our teacher, Vince, was that you have to study the Nei Jing. And that came to him from Vietnamese Dr. Van Gee, who was also a Nei Jing scholar. And so Van Gee told Vince quite bluntly, like, if you want to be any good at this, or if anybody wants to be any good at this, they have to read the Nei Jing. So I had been reading whatever kind of mediocre translations I could get my hands on at that point, because this is 15 years ago, and there's even less available to read about the Nei Jing. Now it's quite cool how much there is to read about it. And the sinological community that's like focusing on that field of study has really exploded, I feel like, in the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was exposed, thinking a lot about the Nei Jing, and then I found this program at the NUNM, the National University of Chinese Medicine, that focused on classics. And so I gravitated to that program, and then through the course of that study, ended up studying classical Chinese and training with some really great teachers there who were all classically based, could read and write the language, were well versed in the Shanghun Lun and the Jingui Yaolui and the Nei Jing. There were a number of Chinese teachers there who were trained in China and then emigrated here, in the 90s. And they were old school. These doctors were like, it's funny, we have this dichotomy in this part of the world between TCM and classical Chinese medicine, and which is just kind of, I just don't think it exists. I just think it's a false dichotomy. And I think it has to do with the marketing, honestly. The marketing of Chinese medicine programs to consumers. I think they want to make that dichotomy to make one more valuable than the other. But you meet these doctors who are now in their 70s, and many of them had lived through the Cultural Revolution, and they saw no contradiction in studying TCM and memorizing the Nei Jing. That's just how it was done. And so there were a number of these doctors on the faculty at that school too. So it was a really interesting mix of younger Westerners who were training in that field of study, and then I'm going to call them old school Chinese doctors who were trained in the 60s and 70s in the TCM institutions during and just after the Cultural Revolution. And these guys walked around with little pocket versions of the Nei Jing in their back pocket.
I've got a buddy who just gifted me with a pocket version of the Nanjing.
Yeah, there you go.
Just like a pocket version. I love all the big commentaries and all that. He just laid it. I swear it is. It's a pocket version. And he's like, well, just read this. Like, just go over it. It's not the greatest. It's in English. It's not the greatest translation. It's a good enough translation. It's small, it's portable. You can put it in your pocket. In between whatever, you can pull it out and just read over a difficulty again. What does it say to you now?
Yeah, that's the definition of a clinical manual in my mind, and I would see Dr. Chin is one of these doctors they all studied in Chengdu. They were all trained in Chengdu, and
There's a huge amount of people from Chengdu that have come to the United States to teach us medicine. One of my main teachers also she was from Chengdu.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
It's curious.
Yeah, it is curious,
Yeah, how this all comes down to us. Anyway, so you gravitated toward this. You woke up one day and I actually like medicine. In fact, I want to know more about medicine. Off to school you go, and then into language you go. And we talked earlier about how you get anywhere in this life. And one of us said something like, "Oh yeah, accident and inspiration.
There you go.
That'll get you to where you're going." It's like qi and xing, which I don't really want to get into too much because that was a great, awesome conversation, and y'all can go get that over at Sabina Wilms's website.
It's a rabbit hole for sure.
But we do this, and partly I think because we're trying to understand. This stuff is so damn interesting, and like we were saying, it's hard to nail it down. In fact, it's not meant to be nailed down.
Right.
If you're nailing it down, you're missing
exactly.
it. And one of the things for me, I speak a little Chinese. I read a little Chinese. I've been practicing medicine 20 plus years. Often enough with the idea that, oh yeah, I know something about what the ancients knew. And then I realize that's a lot of hubris. How the hell could I even begin to imagine the mental framework of somebody even 100 years ago, let alone 1,000?
Absolutely.
And yet, here's the lovely contradiction. We have these materials that have come down to us through time, culture, dynasties. And so while we are nothing like a Han Dynasty doctor, we're not, in fact, I don't think any of us could even be a Qing Dynasty doctor for that matter, just the differences in life and everything. Yet there's these principles. There's something that comes through that kind of ignites within us that allows us to practice this thing we call, I don't know, Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, East Asian medicine, classic. Whatever you want to call it, you could put a name on it. It doesn't matter what name you put on it. There's this stuff that we do.
Sure. Yeah. For me, the language aspect of this practice, this is really difficult to quantify. I've been particularly tuned into it over the past 2 years by studying with Sabina Wilms and doing her Peach Blossom Collective language studies, which is quite remarkable. It's hard. It's darn hard, very rigorous.
Look who your teacher is.
But man, it's so illuminating. But anyways, I have these moments often over the past couple of years of doing that where it's usually late at night because that's usually when I have the time and the space in my life to sit and think about these things. And you're sitting looking at these characters and you're looking at what's on your computer screen in this case. It's really hard to fathom that this is being communicated to you across that yawning space of time and culture to your little brain in your little corner of the universe on the other side of the world at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, and that these things have endured and that we still find them compelling, more than compelling. If these ideas are powerful enough to shift how you experience reality, I'd say that's more than compelling. I'd say that's seismic. And that's really what the potential is seismic change in one's perception of even the most mundane experiences in the world. And so that got kind of hooked on that, to put it in a certain light. That feeling of the Chinese character Tong.
Tong bu tong bu tong tong.
There you go. That was exactly the quote I was going to say. That one,
Yeah, the open tongue.
Exactly. Open connectivity, between two things, between two entities, and in the Nei Jing, it's a lot of talk about how you're going to tong with the heavens and open connectivity with the heavens. But it's not a one-way street. It's you're connected with the heavens and the heavens are connected with you. It's there's this thoroughfare between those two places. And so there's that 11 o'clock at night on my computer in the January in southern Vermont. I'm tonging with Confucius.
Right. Oh, Stefan, this is really helpful because I am a really skeptical. I'm just this Midwest meat and potatoes skeptical kind of person. I really am. I live in Missouri, the show me state. That's the actual motto. I'm not kidding you. Missouri is the show me state. Totally. That's me, man. And so, yeah, we're reading this stuff, or we're getting these ideas, or we're learning, whatever we're learning about the medicine. It's coming through time. It's coming through teachers. If we're lucky enough to be able to read and understand it, it's coming through that source as well. And I so often have that question. It's like, am I understanding this? Am I making shit up? Am I trying to fit these lovely poetic ideas into some kind of story that's a little self-aggrandizing and a little humbling and hopefully useful in clinic? I doubt myself all the time with it because I'm not sure that I actually understand what these people writing this stuff were talking about. Do I really understand it? I first go to, I'm probably misunderstanding it before I understand it. But when you bring up this idea and you bring up the capacity and the possibility that we can have this open communication that tongues, that lands in a very profound way with me.
Good.
I mean, that's because we hear this idea of transmission. And again, when I hear the word transmission, I always get a little bit squirrely. Like, are you sure that you're getting signal and not noise?
Right.
Or is it your vivid imagination, Michael Max, that's making this shit up? I'm always skeptical about stuff like that. But considering the possibility that through time there's this capacity for Tong, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think healthy skepticism is really important. So don't ever abandon that.
I mean, it's built into me. I'm not...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Well, it is.
When we're all so steeped in scientific paradigm of the 21st century that we should all be healthy skeptics in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there is a propensity for people in our profession to make stuff up. The kind of loosey-goosiness of the ideas and the loosey-goosiness of the language that we've just talked about with this whole negative capability, that definitely can lend itself to people going off the res, so to speak, and just kind of spinning off in their own minds about what some of these ideas mean. So I think the healthy skepticism is really important, a really important part of it. But it's a balance, because you do also want to leave yourself open enough to the possibility of Tong with Confucius, with Zhuangzi, with the authors of the Nei Jing, with Zhang Zhongjing. So you have to really kind of split your brain and let yourself go there, but also be a little bit skeptical at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So this winds us a little bit. I want to come to something you mentioned earlier about your interest in E, right? Often translated as intention.
Yes.
Because this is another one of those things that for me is troublesome. And it's troublesome because I don't really understand what intention means. I used to think I did. I used to think it was kind of like, well, I want to do something. I got this idea. I want to go do it, or I'd like to see something happen. Okay, is that desire or is that intention? That starts to get pretty slippery in there. And I hear people talk all the time in our profession about the importance of using intention in their work. But I got to tell you, man, the longer I go with this, the more I've got no idea
what exactly it means.
What exactly intention is. And when I hear people say that they're using it in their practice, I actually don't understand what that means. I have to ask them and get specifics.
Yeah.
So again, this is one of those really slippery terms. We can put it right up there with Xing and Qi and Yin and Yang, E, significance, meaning, intention. Yeah. So let's noodle on this a bit with our sort of fuzzy, loose mind.
Well, I mean, I'd say, just in the context of Xingyi, which is where I first encountered it. And this is how I think of it, is that within that context, we're using our Xing, we're using our forms to hone our intentions. And you are moving your body through a series of physical forms. You're using your Xing to move through a series of physical forms. But then with your mentation, if you will, with your intention, you are setting it differently each time with a different set of forms. And then, so it's through the use of your form, through the training of your form, through your use of your Xing, that you then train your intention. It doesn't get much closer to what your question of, like, what is intention? But at least I just want to get that out of the way. That's really like how I thought a lot about intention before I ever got around to practicing medicine. But I find now I am one of those practitioners who I use intention every day. It's a big part of my needling. It's a big part of what I do clinically, both in terms of doing manual work, tuina, and doing acupuncture. So how it means to me, for instance, there is a form that we do where you move your qi. It takes about almost an hour to do. It's called Jingluo Qigong, and you move your qi through the entire channel system of your body, and it follows the same, what we call the organ clock, but is really the tidal flow of qi and blood in our bodies that's explained in the Nei Jing. So this form follows that same order, same the channel system that we all know, and you're using your intention the whole time. You're setting your intention with your hands and your mind to then trace the qi through each channel. One by one. I'll go through all 12 channels. And so this is another way that we learn to hone our intention, is by focusing our intention in a certain spot and then moving the qi with your intention, combination of your intention and your hand, through each channel one by one. So in that case, like I am intending very specifically for the qi to move in a very specific place in a very specific way. And then that translates clinically, particularly to acupuncture, no, really to tuina too, is, for instance, if I set out to do tuina, my intention is to clear their gallbladder channel of their right leg. This is what I want to achieve clinically because I know it's going to have X, Y, and Z effects. Mm-hmm. Then I'm using the same skill that I've honed with my Qigong and my Gong Fu to then set my intention into my hand and then into the patient's channel and then move their qi with the aid of my physical hand out and through the channel to clear the channel. And I'll tell you, if I don't set my intention clearly, it doesn't work very well. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between me just like doing some tuina, doing some hand techniques and not using my intention, and me like very clearly setting my intention, like I'm going to clear this gallbladder channel with my hand. And then you can, needling, it's very similar too. Needling, it's even cooler with needling because you set your intention at the tip of the needle and then you can move your intention up and down the channel and different sorts of ways. But still always with this intention. It's like, what do I want to do? Do I want to tonify or do I want to clear, to kind of loosely categorize? And then I find if I don't set my intention clinically, then I'm just wandering all over the place. I'm like, well, let's do a little of this, let's do a little of that. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And then the results are mediocre.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. So I'm hearing something that very much settles for me. I can feel it in my body when I hear you say it. And that is that you ground it in your body. You ground it in your physicality. You ground it in form.
Absolutely. Yeah.
First and foremost, grind it into the form. Maybe it takes some grinding. And the next thing that I hear you talking about, and to me this sounds a lot like clear diagnosis. You're talking about being very precise with what you're looking to do. You're talking about gallbladder channel. Like there's a problem with the gallbladder channel. I'm going to dredge that gallbladder channel because there's an excess there. You're very clear with your diagnosis. You know what you're looking at and you know how you want to go after it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this makes a lot of sense to me. Something that I remember learning in school And this was very unsatisfying. Things like, well, we put a needle here, and what that needle's going to do is it's going to move the chi, and then that's going to help blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, we're moving the chi. And, like, so what?
Yeah.
It's like there's no intelligence in that. It's like there's something missing. But to be able to go, yeah, I'm going to move the chi in this specific place, and I'm going to do it through this specific method, in the same way that you'd say, I'm going to go cut that tree down, and here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we got wood stacked up.
Yeah.
That's very different from, well, we're just going to cut the tree down. That tree needs to come down. We're going to get that tree down.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And the clearer I get as I progress, I've been doing this professionally for a little less than 10 years, but the clearer I get with that intention, the faster the results, honestly, and the less kind of noodling around that I have to do in order to produce positive effects with patients. But it comes back to this famous line in the Nei Jing about needling. And I'm not going to get this quote totally right, but it's like when you're needling somebody, you want to make sure all of the windows are closed, and you want to needle as though you're staring into the edge of the abyss and you're holding a tiger by the tail. I'm pretty sure that's all the pieces.
So basically, no fucking around.
Right, exactly. Okay, we can swear on this podcast? Why didn't you tell me that?
Well, I don't often swear, but I just heard you talk about it. It's like the windows are closed, you're staring at the abyss. It's like, all right, buckle up.
Yeah.
Like really, like no messing around, like you with the needle. Like, listen up, Bubba.
This is serious stuff. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is serious stuff. Yeah.
And so that's where I go with my intention, is to the tip of the needle. And I have that quote in my mind often. It's like staring over the edge of the abyss and holding a tail by the tiger. And with my intention, honing in on the edge of that needle. And then from there, you can do different things.
And you're clear. You have this aspect of clarity that goes with it. You know what you're looking at, and you know what you want to do with it.
Yes, I'm not always right.
Well, okay, there's that.
So let's be clear about that. That just because I'm like clear on my intention, or I try to be clear on my intention, and I try to like utilize this skill, because intention is a skill, like anything else. It's a skill, and it's something that we can all develop and hone through a variety of different practices, but it's something you can get better at, and that's really the important thing. So even though I try to be as clear as possible on that intention, like sometimes it's like I'm just not right. And I'm just like barking up the wrong tree. And it's so.
Well, there's something really helpful, I think, here about going all in on what we think it is. If we're right, we're helpful. If we're wrong, we find out how we're not right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're kind of like loosey-goosey about it and you're right, so what? What did you learn about that? It's like why I really love the Sheng Han Lun formula so much, because if you're right, there's no question. And if you're not, there's no question. It's like that did not produce the effect that I was going for. So, but as far as like working with and like honing the intention, we'll call it, if you can just think about it very like viscerally and physically, because I really think that I really try to like kind of always come back to our physical forms, because it's easy when you're talking abstractly about the energetics of things to spin off into the ether. And if you're talking about your body, you're talking about your body. Everyone can relate to that. So to hone your intention like physically and in your form, if you think like I'm going to have the intention of raising my right finger right now, but not actually raise my finger, what does that feel like? And you can feel like if you do that little exercise, there's like this little bit of tension that gets introduced into the muscles and tissues of your finger, but it hasn't yet expressed into the movement of your finger. So that's a good physicalization of intention and setting an intention that you can do with really any body part or any movement. But just that moment, what does that moment right before you move feel like, before you've actually completed the move? Like, what is that moment in that space there? That's where the intention resides.
It's like there's a potency in that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the more that I kind of work with that clinically too, the more like, for instance, stimulating the needles used to be like this thing that I just did because somebody said I should do it. And I was like, oh, I'll go and twist the needles a little bit. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll just do it. And then now I'm like, oh no, now I know what I'm doing. I'm going in with my intention to each one of those needles, and I'm focusing my intention on the tip of that needle, and I'm holding it like the tail of a tiger at the edge of an abyss. And I'm doing that on all 12 of these needles. then that totally changes the tenor of a treatment.
The word Tong comes to mind.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I certainly don't say that I pull that off every day. I mean, that's really that's what I go for. But we all have our ups and downs, and there's plenty of days when I'm spacing out, or I didn't sleep well, or whatever it is, where my intention is not all there. But I don't know, the more I do this, the more I'm like, this is what it's all about. This is how you achieve the miraculous and subtle that Ling Shu Wen talks about with the needles. Like, that's where the miraculous subtlety resides, is in working with the intention.
And it really takes time.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I'm at the tip of the iceberg, and I'm almost a decade into this. I hope I get to do this for another 30 years, because I got plenty more to figure out.
I've been at it for getting close to a quarter century, which is a weird thing to think about. That time can go by that quickly. One of the thoughts that I frequently have is, I thought by now I'd know a whole lot more than I do.
Yeah.
And then the other thought that comes up right next to it is, man, I've learned a lot more than I ever imagined I would.
Right.
And both of those things are true.
Yes.
The privilege that we have of being able to go into clinic, here I go again, bringing it back to clinic, to be able to go into, and I do call it a sacred space, and I don't use that term lightly, to be able to be with another human being in a moment of difficulty for them, or they wouldn't be in front of us, and to puzzle through what might be helpful. It's an extraordinary opportunity to do all this kind of cultivation that you're talking about. We talk about cultivation all the time in our work. I don't know if the schools advertise this to students that, oh yeah, so you're going to get out of here in 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, and then, 10 years from now, you'll start to get it.
They wouldn't have any students if they said that.
You wouldn't have any students, for good reason. How about nursing school? I could pull down a cool 80,000 in my second year.
Step out of graduation. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that what you were just saying about like working clinically for 25 years and feeling, on the one hand, wow, I've learned a lot. And on the other hand, wow, I don't really know anything.
Well, no, not that I don't know anything. I know that I know some things. It's that I thought I would know more.
Okay, that's different. That's true. Yeah, that's different. Yeah. I'd say that working clinically brings me a similar feeling, but also being aware of the depth and breadth of the history of this medicine brings me a similar feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Of every once in a while, I get a little on my high horse about how much I know and how much I've studied, and then all it takes is a little bit of study to see that 2,000 years of the written history of this medicine is like, what have I done? Not a lot in the face of that. And so I think those two things for me keep me grounded, both clinical work and then looking back 2,000 years and knowing where we come from.
Yeah, and again, there's an open conduit. If we can work our way to it, we can tong into some sense of what those other people were experiencing.
Yeah, it's there. That's exactly right. I mean, I remember when I left school and when I've had teachers pass in the past couple of years, I've had some really important teachers pass, and I've thought, like, man, what am I going to do? Like, these people are gone. Like, I have no guidance. Like, I'm just floating here now.
Guess what? It's even worse because now you're the guy.
I wouldn't go that far.
No. I mean, in terms of in charged with keeping that flame alive and passing it along, yeah, that's your responsibility now.
Well, and that's where the texts come in, I think, is like that teachers pass, and it's tragic, and it's always going to be hard, and it's always going to be kind of a gut-wrenching thing. But the texts will be there, thankfully.
And your experience with your teachers will be there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. But I think that tonging, for lack of a better translation of it, because I agree, it's one of those, it's like qi. It's like it can't really be translated, so why should we try? So that lack of tonging is kind of one of the things that's the most empty about modern medicine, is that it's got nowhere to tong to, is that it's always looking forward, it's always moving into the future, and so there is nothing to be openly connected with in its past. And that's really what one of the things that this medicine has to offer is exactly that, is looking backwards to move forwards.
Yes. Now, And this, again, is a place where I feel like we need to be careful. Easy to be nostalgic. It's easy to... It's like, oh, I'm part of an XYZ lineage, and that it's like belonging to an exclusive club. I know for myself, I'm not speaking for anyone else other than me. It's easy to fall into thinking I might know something that I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of riding on someone else's coattails, or there's a famousness about something, or there's a something about something. And if I'm connected to it, then it means that I've got it. But I don't think that's the case. It's like I could be connected to it, but that means I've got an opportunity to learn from it. It doesn't mean I have it.
Right. You have to verify it. This is I've been studying this quote from the Nei Jing. I'm teaching this Nei Jing, or co-teaching this Nei Jing class right now. And this quote that we have been talking about comes up a few times, and it's something along the lines of, the methods come from the ancient times, the fa come from the ancient times, the yan, the verification, comes from beginning right now. And then a couple of lines later, the next line here, we go back to tonging. And then after those things are complete, this is me extrapolating, but what they seem to be saying is that once those things are complete, then you will be tong with that which is without end. You will tong with the infinite, if you need to talk on about it. I'll just let that sit for a minute. Yeah.
Yes. And all y'all that are listening to this right now, you can just hit rewind for a second.
It's a good one.
And where's this from again?
It's from the Ling Shu, I think 71 or 73. But first of all, one of the things that blows my mind about that is that was written probably in like 1st century BC. So they're talking about the methods that came from the ancients, like the ancients for them. Mm-hmm. And then the verification for them began then 1st century BC in the Han Dynasty. But for us, it's quite different. The methods of the ancients came from 1st century BC, from the Ling Shu and the Nei Jing, or the Suen. And then the verification begins right now with what we do every day in the clinic. But even more than that, really, like how we see the world, how we experience reality, all of that holds the potential to verify these things. And then, or what I think is the payoff, is this tonging with the infinite, this tonging with that which is without end.
I'm just thinking that if religion did that, it would cause a lot less damage.
For sure. Well, and it's through lines like that you can see that the Nei Jing ranks with the great religious texts of humanity, with the Torah and the Quran and the Bible. Like, it really ranks up there because they're talking about the same ideas of the same breadth and scope, and with the same potential to change our experience, the potential to change the human experience, which is pretty heady stuff for acupuncture. Every time I read the Ling Shu, I'm like, man, this is a lot for acupuncture. Okay,
so it's heady in a way, but I'm sitting here with you in this moment in time. It's a beautiful fall day here in St. Louis, Missouri. It rained all night and throughout most of the morning. It's gray. It looks like the Pacific Northwest, except we have vibrant colors on the trees. I'm sitting here taking all that in my window as I'm talking to you about this, air quotes, heady stuff. But man, do I feel it in my body.
Exactly.
It lands in a way that makes me just want to slow down a little bit.
Well, and if you think about how the authors of the Nei Jing were trying to encapsulate their embodied experiences in language, this is what the Nei Jing is, you could say. It's like their best attempt at writing down what they were embodying. What you just described is like, oh, this is something that's embodied to you now. Mm-hmm. So our job, our process is the opposite. Our process is to take what they have written and then embody it in our experiences.
Yeah, it just happened for me. It just landed. I just got a little taste of it. Oh, that's what Tong feels like. Or maybe one expression of what Tong feels like.
Well, and that's a great point, actually, is that this verification is not, it's not like there's one way to verify it. It's like, this is not an evidence-based scientific experiment where it's like, this is the answer that you're going to come up with. It's like everybody's verification it can vary wildly. And you could give a hoot about Chinese medicine and still find ways to verify what the Nei Jing says in your daily life.
That's a provocative statement.
One of my jobs now, I feel like, is to look around me and try to verify what the Nei Jing says to me and why the leaves are falling off the trees right now, or why my children behave the way they do. Seemingly like disparate and unrelated events, like they can really all be kind of wound up together by what's written in the Nei Jing. And so I feel like that's almost more than like how to clinically apply these ideas. I'm almost more interested in like how I can put on what I started to call my Nei Jing goggles, like looking out at the world and understanding it from that perspective. And that's exciting for me.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Well, yeah, and if we can better understand the cycles of nature beyond, oh, it's fall and the leaves fall down, if we can use that to better understand why and how our children are behaving the way they are, and how we are with our spouse, and maybe how a certain food feels in our body.
Or how the stock market operates. I get really tripped out thinking about it, how the stock market is an expression of yin-yang theory. That's one of my favorites.
Well, they call it the Daily Dow. I mean, come on. It's like right in front of us. No secret there. How's the Dow doing today?
That's good. That's good.
I want to pivot just a little bit. Something I'd written down earlier that I wanted to talk with you about. And I don't want to get away without bringing this up. It's a bit of a pivot, but of course it'll touch on everything else because that's just the way our medicine works. We were talking a little bit at one point in email about tensegrity. This is something that's really got my attention lately. Not just because I live in St. Louis where we have this botanical garden with this giant geodesic Buckminster dome.
Nice.
We might have the biggest geodesic dome in the world.
Wow, I had no idea. That's very cool.
Right here in St. Louis, yeah. And inside is a like tropical jungle. It's a climatron. And all y'all is listening, if you ever make it to St. Louis, the Missouri Botanical Garden is not to be missed. Truly incredible. Anyway, tensegrity, how things hold themselves together.
How living structures hold themselves together, yeah.
Yes, how living structures. Well, not just living structures, okay? So I had a beautiful example of tensegrity a couple weeks ago. This like popped into my mind. I was out with a friend. We were sailing. We're sailing these very complex little racing boats. They're like 16 feet long. A lot of sail, lots of lines, and there's this like rig tension that holds the thing together. So before you put the sails up, it looks like a spaghetti factory. There's just like lines all over the place. And it's all slack and it just looks like a mess. Like, what the hell's going on in here? But once you put the sails up and everything's got its proper amount of tension, it's like everything snaps to grid. Everything's in its exact place. Everything has the space to move the way it needs to move.
Yes.
It comes alive under tension.
Correct. Yeah.
So not just living things. I mean, living things for sure, but even something like a sailboat.
I guess I specified living things because I know in my readings about tensegrity and Buckminster Fuller and how he developed this concept is that he was basing that idea on living structures. So even though his geodesic domes are man-made structures, they're based on living forms. So
yes, that's where he got his inspiration.
So I guess that's why I qualified it. But yeah, it's such an interesting term, and tensegrity, tension with integrity. And I talk about this a lot in clinic, actually, because how I explain to people how their forms are functioning, how their xings are functioning, is we're not compression structures, we're tensegrity structures. In that most buildings out in the world, except for geodesic domes, are compression structures. They're just building materials stacked up on each other. And if you, for instance, plow your car into the corner of one of those buildings, then the whole corner will fall down because everything is stacked up using the weight of gravity. And then once you remove the lower members, then gravity takes over and everything falls down. But tensegrity uses just how you really eloquently described with the sails about how they came alive. It uses the tension of those tensile membranes to then create structural integrity. So that then if you were to, say, drive a car into the corner of a building that was a tensegrity structure, it would be able to then shuttle the trauma from that accident around to different parts of the building. And this is what our bodies are. This is how we can be in car accidents. This is how we can have really terrible, physically traumatic things happen to us and get up and go and not be completely disabled like a building that's been plowed into with a car. So it's such a relevant term. That's really the word. It's just so relevant to our bodies and how they function, and then therefore I think how to really maintain them and to keep them functioning. Not just clinically, but how you stay physically fit and able, especially as we age. Yeah, exactly.
Most especially. I got some experience with that.
I'm only at the front end of that, but enough to know what's coming, so.
It's coming. So when you think about tensegrity and you think about how we think of physiology through our medical tradition, what would you say are some of the main components that go into that?
Well, I thought a lot about it in terms of the tendon channels. I don't even know if they're taught in acupuncture schools. I know that they might have been a part of my boards that I took 10 years ago, but they're certainly really not a part, I don't think, of most people's practice, medical practice, and not really like in our mind's eye when we're practicing Chinese medicine. But it's a whole field of study in and of themselves, and they suffer in the Nei Jing, they have a whole chapter dedicated to their pathways. They suffer a pathology that is really exclusive to the tendon channels. And I think that if you take this idea of tensegrity and then apply it to the tendon pathway descriptions that are in the Nei Jing, then you can begin to see how those tendon pathways function physiologically. So that's what they have to do with each other, is you're given these really rote passages in the Ling Shu chapter 13. You're just given like page after page of like, this is the tendon channel and this is where it goes. And then you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? But if you take tensegrity and apply it to that, then it's very illuminating. And then if you start to see the body as a tensegritous system, I don't know if that's even a word, but
You might have just coined a word. Yes, it is a tensegritous system.
That can definitely help you clinically. You can definitely start to understand how different tendon channels function. And if a tendon channel has suffered trauma in one particular part, but then you see a problem that is expressing somewhere else in that channel or even in another tendon channel, and you understand that this is a system of tensegrity, then you can start to see how that car accident causing that trauma then ricocheted across the person's body. And it has a real logic to it. And I think, I don't know this, I haven't gotten good enough yet, but I think that if you get good enough, you could probably start to predict people's traumas. In that, like you can, if you get to know the system as a system of tensegrity and well enough that you can know, well, they had a car accident and they got hit in their right hip, then you can know that, well, someday you might have problems in your left shoulder. So I don't know that, but that's kind of where I think that it would go.
It could be prognostic that way.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And what we know of channel pathways and trajectories and law channels and how things are connected to each other, we have the maps.
We do.
That tell us a whole lot if we go bother to look.
Right, yeah.
Especially thinking as a tensegritous unit. Now, when you're working with the tendon meridians, the tendon channels, is that usually through Tuina? Do you use needles for that? What's your way of interacting with those?
I usually think of it with Tuina. I know that there are schools of thought that talk about how the Wei Qi flows in the tendon channels, and I don't know much about those. I really only know what the Nei Jing says. So yeah, I mostly think about it in terms of Tuina and all of the joint manipulation that goes along with doing Tuina. But they're quite different from the primary channel pathways, from all the Luo vessels, all the divergent channels. All of that in the Nei Jing at least, is talking about circulation of blood and qi, but physically blood. The tendon channels don't have any circulatory nature to them in my reading of the Nei Jing. They don't have blood moving in them the way that the Jingmai do, which makes them really different. And like I said, completely underexplored and therefore underutilized.
Yeah, well, you just opened up a whole new can of worms here. That sounds like a potentially fruitful inquiry.
Yeah, for sure. I thought a lot about it 10 years ago. I wrote a master's thesis on the topic, and then I hadn't thought about it until last week when I got my thesis out and read it again, and it got me jazzed for it.
Isn't it funny how sometimes something will come up, we'll focus on it, we'll think about it, maybe practice with it a bit, and then it kind of goes dormant? Do all these other things, and then it arises again sometime down the road. So let me take another look at that. And there's a whole new landscape to explore.
For sure, yeah, exactly. I'm 10 years on in my life and also in my study of this medicine, so there's a whole new perspective to be had.
It really is an iterative practice, I have found.
Iterative? What does that mean?
Iterative means we come back to something again and again and again and
like
again.
Iteration, I get it. Yeah.
Iteration.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Yeah, that's a really great way to think of it.
We could look at it as like, oh God, this thing again, I thought I had this settled. I thought I had this sorted out. It's like, well, you did have it sorted out. And now another turn around the spiral. It's an iterative process. Now's a chance to learn about it in another way.
That's a really great way to think about it. That's a great word to say it, too.
Yeah. And when you mix Tong in with that, because you don't just Tong something once and like, okay, I got it now. Okay, I Tong Jiang Zhong Jing. I got it now. It's like, no, Tonging into something, you can go ping that again.
Yeah.
There'll be something else there.
There'll be something else there. Yes.
All right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this time with you, and I suspect we could yammer on about a whole lot of other stuff, but we had some technical problems earlier on, and I know you have got things to do, so maybe you'll come back and we can have a conversation again about some other stuff.
Anytime. I'd be happy to. This was really a lot of fun. I'm always happy to riff on these things.
Great. Just before we wind it on down, for all those that are listening and for any that are thinking about, should I investigate learning a little Chinese or not? Why would it be helpful?
Well, I guess it would come back to what I think has been the theme of this conversation, which is Tong, which is openness and open connectivity. That when it boils down to it, there really is no way to have that open connectivity with the roots of our medicine without some study of the language. That doesn't mean you have to get a PhD in it and study it in school for years and years. But even just the most basic familiarity of some important characters will open up that connectivity in really exciting ways. Not only enliven your practice, but it'll enliven how you look at and experience the world.
We may have to pick that up in our next conversation, some of the important characters. That would be fun.
For sure.
All right, Stefan, thank you so much for this time today. I have thoroughly enjoyed this and have a whole new perspective on Tong. I'm curious to see how it's going to show up in my work.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Michael. It's been fantastic.
When I first started studying Chinese, I thought that if I could understand the medicine in Chinese, then I'd be able to explain it better in English. I was wrong. But what I did find was that learning a language that doesn't nail things down like English does was helpful in that our work in clinic is rarely a step-by-step logical flowchart. As we discussed in this conversation, it requires us to hold different ideas and possibilities all at the same time. And so puzzling through Chinese can help us not because we understand for sure, but that it becomes possible to consider multiple possibilities and allow that to inform our clinical decisions. There is a lot in the Chinese language that doesn't quite translate into English. And so I want to put in a plug here for learning some medical Chinese because it actually makes practicing the medicine a little bit easier. And there's a great app that can help you with that. It's called Chinese Medical Characters. It's available for both the Apple and Android universes. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.